Okay, all right. Now, I'm going to do something a little different this hour, and I don't want anyone to draw any conclusions about where I'm coming from. I'm just coming from the position of an impartial observer and someone who is interested in the human condition. And I'm not arguing or inquiring or looking at this from necessarily the perspective of either sex. We rely on the law or some kind of law of physical attraction to get together, find a mate, and procreate the species. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. It's as old as the hills. A lot of people would dismiss it as hormones. Some would say, well, it's money and status. It's a lot of things is what it is. But why so many divorces? It's always been a question that never really has a satisfactory answer, except people want to change. They want to change. They've got to have a new stimulus, something new in their life. They get tired of the same old, same old. At least that's what they think. And today, who was it? GOP Senator Joni Ernst filed for divorce, claiming her husband verbally abused her. All right, well, what the hell is verbal abuse? I mean, one of the biggest secrets in America is the simple fact that husbands are abused. They don't talk about it because it's macho and you don't want to talk about it. The sad thing is both sides are probably about equal in their alleged abuse. What is abuse? It's doing something the other person considers offensive, invasive, insulting, whatever. So what about this issue of male and female, attractive, nice-looking people, finding one another, being drawn together? That's a romance. Are all romances tied to some kind of a cycle? Is there a beginning, a middle, and then an end or a period we could almost call stasis? And that can lead to sometimes a long-term marriage, 30, 40, 50 years, 60 years, but probably not anymore. That's not the culture we live in. But there's more to it than most people would think. Now, a couple of years ago, I ran into somebody at a post office, and nice gentleman. We started talking, and he had some ideas. I forgot how the conversation even got started. It's been too long, but he had some ideas about human relationships. He's well-versed in many areas, heart attacks, heart health, cancer, getting well. But he had some ideas about the basic routine of humankind falling in love, being together, creating offspring, and then falling out of love. What is love? What is attraction? What is the rush? Is it some kind of psychological or psychophysical attractive state that just is doomed to burn out and be replaced with another stage as we run through this cycle? There is a cycle in all relationships. There's a cycle in everything. Nothing wrong with that. Nobody's to blame. It is what it is. Anyway, the gentleman's name is Spencer Feldman. Spencer has kept in touch occasionally, dropped me a line, and I said, one day I'll have you on the program, and we'll get your ideas about human relationships. Now, again, I don't want you to think these are my views, my ideas. I'm just along for the ride like you are. But Spencer had some interesting ideas, and so he is standing by somewhere right now out there. Spencer, are you there? Can you hear me all right?
I can. Yes, thanks, Jeff.
Well, nice to talk to you again.
Yeah. So, I'm not a relationship expert. I don't have a PhD in,
right,
psychotherapy or anything like that.
Neither do I.
I can tell you my story, and I can tell you the kind of things that I came up with. And basically, what happened was, after 17 years of marriage, my wife fell in love with another man, and I'm not the first person that's happened to. But I'm a researcher, So I did the only thing I knew how to do. I researched, and I took a lot of notes, and I decided to, once I thought I understood what had happened, I decided that the notes really could be a small book that I'd give away. And what I thought I'd share with your audience is a kind of a quick run through what I learned as I was trying to uncover all the things you talked about, the cycles and relationships, what had happened to my marriage, could my marriage be fixed, did I want it to be fixed, what would I want out of another relationship. And one of the first things I found was a study that said 66 to 75% of people in relationships would cheat if they thought they could get away with it.
Whoa, let me run that by. Hold on, I'm going to think about this. 66 to 75% of people would cheat if they thought they could get away with it in a relationship. Okay, all right.
Right. Now, I can leave my wallet, on a table with people I don't know, and 66 to 75% of the people won't steal my wallet. But the person that I'm, dedicating my life to, that I'm in love with, I can't trust them. So,
Oh, that's a very interesting analogy. No, hold on. That's a very interesting analogy, and I want to think about that. You could put your wallet on a table, right? And 75% of the people, maybe 90, wouldn't touch it. And yet here you are in a relationship which is arguably, according to many, and again, I'm not speaking for myself here, I'm trying to be just a general advocate, is the most important thing in life. Finding someone, that perfect someone, and manifesting something very special with that person. And yet 66 to 75%, one or the other, male or female, are going to cheat if they think they can get away with it. Or they would cheat if they thought they could get away with it. Hey, that's very interesting. All right.
It's an interesting statistic, and I've got a few more for you before we get into the meat of the book. Yeah. 20% of marriages are classified as sexless in the United States.
Sexless?
So that's not... Yeah, and I don't remember the exact definition. It doesn't mean you never have sex, but it means you have very little.
Got it.
And then here's the last one. And this was not necessarily for today. This is when I wrote the book a few years ago. 41% of first marriages fail. 60% of second marriages fail. And 73% of third marriages fail. So we're actually getting worse. You think after your first marriage, I know.
You think you'd learn, yeah.
That. Yeah, I'll be better with this kind of, and even worse on the third. We get worse at it. So I thought, okay.
There's a reason. Something's wrong. Yeah.
Something's going on. There's some undercurrent. There's some force. If someone's willing to cheat, if 75% of people are willing to cheat on their partner, there's a really strong force here. What is it? So here's what I came up with, Jeff. DNA, genetics, it wants diversity. As an example, the people that cheat have more kids by more different people, and if a plague comes through, their children have so much more diversity, they're more likely to survive and reproduce. So we have in our genes, by virtue of surviving, the genes of people who don't necessarily have monogamy built into them.
And this goes, Spencer, this I assume accrues to both male and female. We're not talking just primarily about men. It's pretty well equal.
We're talking both, and I'll explain to you the difference in how men and women want to find other people. But what happens is the DNA wants diversity. It wants us to make babies, raise them for a few years till they're independent, and then make more babies, but with somebody else. So we're not programmed by our DNA for happily ever after. We're programmed for genetic diversity. And we go through, from what I can tell, 3 stages. Right? There's what you could say fertilization, there's child rearing, and separation. And the first stage is infatuation. It's when you just, and I'm going to give you a brief overview, and then we're going to get into them a little bit more.
Okay.
So in the first stage, what we have is, and I wanted to express a difference between how men and women kind of experience the desire to cheat. Men want the largest quantity of women they can have. That's called polygamy. Women women want the greatest quality man. That's called hypergamy. Now, this makes sense because the investment for a man is a teaspoon of sperm. For a woman, it's much larger. It's 9 months of pregnancy. It's childbirth, which can be deadly. There's a certain percentage of women died in childbirth.
Oh, it used to be terrible. Yeah. So women are more or less looking for, using the term loosely, a trophy man, someone really special. This is a great man,
right.
a stable man, a strong man. And the man, genetically, is programmed to, it's like a herd. I've got a herd of deer around here. There's one male and 5 or 6 females, and they're fine, they're happy. So the DNA is being spread around in nature by most species that way. That's what happened. Now, some species like geese will mate off for life. That's it. They're done. One partner, and that's it.
That's what we thought. Okay. We have actually only, in retrospect, going back through the data, you find that there is no such thing as a monogamous animal except for, I think, these 2 sea worms that physically fuse together.
Oh, interesting.
If some animals, if one of the animals becomes infertile, then the other animal will cheat. So the investment for a woman, 9 months of pregnancy, childbirth, 2 years of breastfeeding. So she is more likely to leave a man for a better man.
For a what?
A better man.
A better.
Hypergamy is I want better.
In her mind, she's climbing the ladder. Okay.
Right. She wants better. Better meaning, provide and protect. I want to. Women are attracted to leaders, and we can get into that later. So what happens is in stage 1, we have infatuation, and that's gets a woman pregnant. And then we go to stage 2, and that's affection and family bonding, because the unit has to stay together long enough for the woman to go through pregnancy and childbirth and breastfeeding. And then the last one is stage 3, where it's breaking up to start it over. And the DNA was going to restart the hypergamy and the polygamy programs to trigger us to find new genetic partners. Having children with the same partner over and over again doesn't increase genetic diversity. So the DNA is going to put us through a series of neurochemicals so that we basically, like puppets on a string, follow its choreographed pattern. And if we're going to take control of our romantic destinies, if we're going to have a chance at real happily ever after, we need to know what these 3 stages we go through are, the neurochemistry behind them, what the DNA is trying to do, and then see if we can hack it. So the first stage, we've all felt it. It's infatuation. It feels wonderful. And the main neurochemical involved in this is phenylethylamine, or PEA for short. Now, there's a word for being addicted to a drug. It's called dependence. But addicted to a person is codependence. And if you look at the phenylethylamine molecule that gets into the body when you're infatuated and your heart's beating and you get...
Where does it come from, Spencer? Where does that particular... Is that a hormone or a chemical?
It's a neurochemical that the brain makes.
Okay, so it comes from the brain, all right, and it's quite pleasant. Probably leaves endorphins back in the stable in some respects, because that is quite a rush for most people.
Well, phenylethylamine, PEA, is 2 methyl groups and a hydrogen atom away from meth. So it's very close to meth, and if you look at what meth does, it stimulates risky behavior. Well, like PEA. And what kind of risky behavior might it stimulate? Unprotected sex, cheating, breaking up, doing all sorts of things. Now, the main thing to understand about PEA is that it blinds us to incompatibilities we have with our partners.
All right, hold on. This is interesting. Excuse me while I stop you. It blinds us to the incompatibilities we have with our partner. In other words, we overlook the issues that are going to cause conflict. We don't see them.
You just can't see them. You can't see them.
Okay.
And the issue is, though, PEA is not sustainable. Amphetamine addicts don't make good parents. So the PEA is there to get you over approach anxiety, to go and connect with a person, even though and to have lots of sex. And then after about 6 months, it drops off. It figures, okay, woman is fertilized. She's going to give birth. Let's shift. because now it's time to change to something else. And so the PEA production drops off.
Now, this isn't a man. This is a male thing you're talking about.
This is men and
both?
women. This is
Really?
All right. Men and women. That the phenylethylamine, that high, that infatuation starts to fade, right? And then you get a new hormone, a new neurotransmitter. The DNA gives us oxytocin. And oxytocin is family bonding. So where PEA will blind us to incompatibilities we have with our partners, oxytocin turns them into adorable quirks. So the woman won't notice that the man snores while they're infatuated. When the PEA calms down and the oxytocin comes on, she's like, oh, he snores. It's adorable, right? It's still, rose-colored glasses. It's still really nice.
All right. Let me go to this PEA, the rush, the beginning. All right, the infatuation. You are dead blind. Male, female, doesn't matter. You are blind. You see an idealized person, and in many ways, people present an idealized version of themselves in courtship in the beginning. They want to be perceived as what the other partner wants. So in a way, both male and females are presenting themselves in the beginning of a relationship, in the rush, as something that they're just not necessarily that person. It's a mask.
You're not going to, the person you meet in infatuation, you will get to hang out with them for 6 months. But you're probably never going to get to meet them again, because the personality they're going to manifest and the personality you're going to have, once PEA is gone, you're going to have a different person, and you'll have the oxytocin person.
Okay.
Now, oxytocin, it makes us more affectionate and cooperative and honest and communicative and forgiving and compassionate and
laid back. Sure. Warm and fuzzy.
Yeah.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these are all important things for long-term relationships once PEA wears off. And so now this is setting the stage for the family bonding. Oh, the pregnant woman, and then the little babies, and it's so sweet, and everyone's cuddling in bed, and it's very nice. And it lasts about 2 years. Now, some people, it can last a whole lifetime, but not everybody, and the goal will be to find out. I'm going to talk about how we can get it to last long.
All right, let me pause there. Now, our younger people in this culture, I don't know, 45 to 50 and down, are constantly being exposed to a digital entertainment overwhelm where they're shown symbolically women that they're supposed to lust for one way or the other, mentally or physically or both. And for the woman, they're shown men that are handsome, and they're the Uberman, they're the Superman. These are idealized templates that both sexes are shown, which essentially, when you think about it, are not designed to drive them into a closer long-term relationship. It's designed to drive them into thinking, wow, something else out there might be interesting and fun. Both sexes. It sounds like it's programmed to assist in the breakdown of relationships. Okay, please go ahead. We're in the oxytocin, number 2.
Well, that's true, but what I would say is that if you're on PEA, not only are you blinded to your partner's imperfections, you can't see other people. You can't fall in love with another person. So, the most beautiful woman could walk by a man, and if he is infatuated with his partner, she sees her as a sister or a mother.
You're in stage 1. She's not a player. Okay, I got it.
Right, and if you're in oxytocin, the same thing. So, it's only when you start leading that into the third stage, we'll talk about in a second, that society and its imagery starts to cause problems. So the oxytocin lasts about 2 years for most people. And then you get to phase 3. Now, the DNA is thinking, okay, we've got a baby's 2 years old, it can walk around a little bit, it's time for more genetic diversity. So what it has to do is get the family unit to break up or get one or both partners to cheat. So what it does is it says, all right, just like I turned off the PEA, I'm turning off the oxytocin. And what we get is one of 2 different neurochemicals. One's called cortisol, and is called prolactin.
Cortisol, and then prolactin.
Cortisol.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cortisol
now,
is the fight or flight hormone made by...
Cortisol is what the body... it's a glucocorticoid. It's what the body creates to raise blood sugar, but we experience it as... what cortisol does is it makes us more angry, more selfish, more vengeful, more stubborn. It's that irritable feeling you get when you're hungry. That's cortisol. It's what allows you to look at Bambi and think, dinner, because it's turning you into a more predator, more psychopathic kind of being, so that you can then go do what you have to do to get your blood sugar up.
Okay. Now, this cortisol is stage 3.
Stage 3, right. Now, the PEA is gone, the oxytocin's gone, and the DNA...
Okay, PEA and oxytocin, Spencer, are not necessarily major triggers for cheating, correct? They technically are the opposite.
Cheating.
All right, there you go.
Yeah, they suppress that.
I just want to
now, cortisol... Yeah, so what happens is cortisol is what makes people fight, and it's oxytocin is the angel on one shoulder, cortisol is the devil on the other. It makes people the worst version of themselves, but it's the worst version that sometimes has to be manifest to survive when, there's famine and you have to do what you have to do.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's fight or flight. Yeah. It's a survival issue.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, right. Or cortisol will be the fight part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the fighting side of it.
All right.
So
now you mentioned cortisol, and excuse me, we got a little delay here. What was the other one beside cortisol for stage 3?
Okay. Cortisol, and the other one is prolactin.
Prolactin. Okay. All right.
We'll come back to that in a second.
Yeah. Take a break, and it's interesting. And remember, it's just, as always, we're just submitting this for your consideration. Make of it what you will. Prolactin, cortisol, stage 3. You can listen to this program again and write these things down. PEA, stage 1. Oxytocin, stage 2. Cortisol, prolactin, stage 3. We'll get back to stage 3, where the cheating impulse or drive would seem to be front and center. 66 to 75% would cheat, male and female, if they thought they could get away with it. And many would anyway. All right, we'll be right back with Spencer Feldman in just a minute. Okay, let's get back to our guest tonight, Spencer Feldman, talking about the human relationship. Now, there are a million factors that come into play in the lives of people. We're not talking about those. But these are the rudiments that Spencer has come up with in his research that generally govern a pattern. All right? What's the divorce rate in this country now, Spencer? It's got to be 60%,
Well, it was, I think, 41% for first marriages when I wrote the book.
Yeah. But overall, it's average. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you add in the people that are staying married but are sexless or cheating or lives of quiet desperation, then you realize it's just not working for most people.
It's just not working for most people for many reasons. Okay. All right. We're in stage 3. Oxytocin is past us now. We're in cortisol, killer cortisol, as I call it, and prolactin. Tell us about prolactin now. Okay,
so some people of the more aggressive bent stay towards and move towards cortisol. They become aggressive. Some people become more depressed with prolactin. It makes people uncommunicative, depressed, hopeless, and it lowers sex drive. And it's important to lower sex drive because the DNA does not want you making any more babies with the same person.
Oh.
Now, here's something.
So this is really, now you've done the research, and this is traceable through human DNA profiling, okay? It's there. You've got hardcore data. Okay.
If if you take a mouse or a rat and you put it in a cage, it starts with cortisol, let me out of the cage, and then eventually when it becomes hopeless and it knows it can't get out, it goes to prolactin. But if you put a second mouse in and they start to fight, well, the prolactin goes away because cortisol suppresses prolactin. Now, this is why people bicker, because some people will bicker, then they'll forget why they're bickering, and they'll say, well, why were we bickering? And then they'll remember, and then they'll bicker again. And the reason they're doing that is because the fighting of cortisol feels better than the depression of prolactin, which is what makeup sex is about. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Oh, hold on. The fighting of and winning, if you win anything in an argument, of cortisol as a progenitor or an instigator of that, is more desirable than the depression of prolactin. Okay, yeah. Got it. Yeah. All right,
so
interesting.
Then the cycle repeats itself. Remember, the cortisol and the prolactin are there to trigger you, to trigger the relationship to self-destruct. Okay? So we've got the PEA for 6 months, the oxytocin for about 2 years, and then cortisol and prolactin will hang in there until you either, find somebody new or break up or divorce or figure out how to get around it. So that's what I want to share with the audience tonight.
All right.
How to outsmart our DNA.
And again, cheating is in stage 3 for the most part. That's where the temptation is. That's where you start to feel there's some primal urge, certainly among men and women, to find new partners, I guess. That's what you're saying. This is interesting. DNA primal.
What happens? Okay. Yeah, the PEA, you can't hear the person snore. The oxytocin is an adorable quirk, and with cortisol, it's, oh my God, if they snore one more time, I'm going to lose it. Same accent, but it's your perception of it.
How do we market PEA? Huh?
Well, I'll tell you how to kind of get it at the end of the talk.
All right.
Prolactin has a 50-minute half-life. That means once it's in the system, it's there for about 3 hours. So better not to make it. Prolactin is raised by excessive sleep, and surprisingly, orgasms will cause prolactin spikes for 2 days. I'm not
excessive sleep. Excessive sleep brings up the prolactin level, and that's a depressant more than anything, a downer.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And then cortisol, to balance that or fight against it, would make people bickering sorts, combative sorts. All right, I got it.
Yeah. So the tantric practitioners had it right. I'm not saying never have an orgasm, but just understand you might not want to have one every time you make love because it's going to spike prolactin over the next 2 days. And for men,
that downer after sex.
Estrogen.
The downer after sex. That's what happens to. I've read about this in men. There's, I guess women glow for a while, but a lot of men, they get to this prolactin downer thing.
It's not as pronounced in women as it is in men, but it's still there. So to suppress prolactin, cold showers will do it. And so does coffee will suppress prolactin. But coffee raises cortisol. So then how do we lower cortisol?
Oh, my.
So the triggers for cortisol are hunger, fatigue, and stress, right? So cortisol also has a long half-life. It takes 4 to 8 hours to leave the body. So once that starts, it's going to be there for a while. Now, you can break it down a little bit with phosphatidylserine, but once, this is why it's important, if you're, don't let yourself get hungry, because once the cortisol gets in there, if you are the kind of person that makes cortisol when you get hungry, which a lot of us are, if you haven't trained your body properly, then it's going to be there for 4 to 8 hours, and you're going to be the worst version of you and see the worst part in your partner for a while. So here's the trick for this.
And logic and pragmatic intellectual approach to trying to become a problem solver in these kinds of fights, arguments, bickering sessions finishes last. Logic doesn't count. You're talking about very strong hormones here, cortisol and prolactin. So cortisol intellectual.
It shifts blood away from the executive centers of your brain. It makes you, a great fighting animal, but not a great thinking one. So here's the thing: when you learn to recognize cortisol in yourself or your partner, don't talk. Walk away. It's only going to turn into a fight, and if they really, and they'll want to pick a fight with you, you'll want to pick a fight with them, and one of you has to say, you know what, we're going to talk about this, but not now. and just walk away. Now, let me tell you what happens when we have cortisol and prolactin. If two people have cortisol and prolactin, I call it the tit-for-tat game. And this is it's like two people hurting each other, back and forth, and you see this, right? If you recognize you're in the tit-for-tat dynamic, just stop, don't talk, walk away, and when you feel the cortisol clear, then you can go back, and it's going to take you a while, yeah. The second game is called what I call the chicken game, where one person has cortisol, the other one has prolactin. And this is where abusive relationships come in, right? One person just rails on the other, or henpecks the other, or is abusive, and the other person just is depressed and hopeless and says, well, I'm stuck, I can't get out. And the way to deal with this is the prolactin person has to learn to become provocable. They have to be able to say, hey, don't talk to me like that, don't treat me like that. And, you're hungry, you're tired, go eat something, take a nap, and I'm leaving because I don't like the way you're interacting with me. The third possibility is the big chill, where you have two prolactin personalities. Both people are non-communicative. Both are giving them the cold shoulder. And the only way out of this is, I would say take a cold shower and a cup of coffee, because, you want to lower the prolactin and maybe raise a little cortisol so you have a little bit of confrontational energy, and then talk about it. Because in the big chill with prolactin, people don't talk. So have a cup of coffee, a cold shower, and talk.
A suffering in silence.
Yeah, and then if you fight, guess what you're going to have afterwards? You're going to have great makeup sex. So,
Nobody wins arguments. Nobody wins.
Nobody wins arguments, but sometimes you need a little bit of that energy to get out of prolactin. Now, so the first gift is, getting rid of, is suppressing prolactin. The second is suppressing cortisol. The name of the book is The Four Gifts. The third gift is raising oxytocin. And you do this with kind words and eating food and gazing in each other's eyes and kissing and stroking and squeezing and scratching like like the primates. Primates only need 2% of their day to do grooming, to pull the bark and insects out of each other's fur, but they spend 20% of their day doing it. They do it because oxytocin is how they bond. So when one primate's grooming another, it is by default not eating, not having sex, not looking over its shoulder for predators, and not sleeping. So what grooming says is, you're more important to me right now than eating, sex, self-preservation, or a good nap combined. So if you want to raise oxytocin, and we do, right, then we have to learn to groom one another. Now, here's one more thing about the whole tantric sex thing. The largest number of receptors are on the sexual organs. So sex is a fantastic way to raise oxytocin. But again, you don't always want to go to orgasm, because then you've got the prolactin spike. So if you want to I invite your listeners to try this one time. Go ahead, make love with your partner. Don't have an orgasm. See how you feel towards them. See if you get that loving, glowing feeling, and it just lasts and lasts. And then compare it to the normal way. Now, oxytocin has a 3-minute half-life. Remember, the other ones, they last for hours.
That's a blink of an eye. Wow.
Yeah, the deck is stacked against us. So whereas cortisol and prolactin can last for hours, oxytocin lasts 16 minutes at most.
Wow.
So one takeaway from this is, you always want to be trying to do something like the apes, like the primates, to raise the oxytocin in your partner. It can be a loving gaze, a sweet word. You're passing by in the kitchen, stroke the person's hair. Do little things, because you want to keep the oxytocin in them. Now, the fourth gift is what I would call reinfatuation. We can't get the PEA back, nor would we necessarily want to live in a PEA state. It's not a functional state. But we can get a little bit of that sense of it. So let me tell you how to make a cocktail neurochemically that's kind of like that. There's a study they did where they had people, strangers, tell how attracted they were to each other, rate their attraction before and after a roller coaster ride together. And there was more attraction after. It's called emotional transference, because the roller coaster raised dopamine, which is novelty, right? And it raised noradrenaline, which is excitement and danger. And these are 2 of the 6 neurochemicals you find during infatuation, with PEA being the big one. Now, we don't always have access to a roller coaster, but try this next time you're going out on a date. one of you take turns, walk with your eyes closed, holding hands. Now, this is new, and it's a little dangerous. Is your partner going to pump you into something? It's a little, and then when that's done, switch. And every time I do this with couples in festivals when I give a talk, everybody's laughing and smiling and happy, and their faces light up because you get a little bit of that initial feeling. Now, there's one more DNA hack I want to talk about, and we kind of got into this in the beginning. Just like the DNA wants genetic diversity and doesn't program us for long-term happiness, and we have to outwit it, only 1 out of 20 men are programmed to be leaders. This is for pack dynamic efficiency. You see this in wolves, you see this in apes.
Alpha. Yeah.
The alpha male. You see this in the military, there's a roughly 20-to-1 ratio. So, and women are genetically programmed to want that number one guy, right? He's the one who's best able to provide and protect.
Right.
Now, but 95% of us are not alpha. Right? That's what I found out about myself. I'm like, why did my wife fall for somebody else? I wasn't that one in 20. And her oxytocin and PDA wore off, and then she became susceptible to somebody else. But all men have the ability to become alpha. When the alpha male in a pack dies, another has to take his place. And genetically, he changes. His testosterone comes up. All these things change. So all men have the program within them to become the leader in their community, to become a king, as it were. Now, it's not, a man doesn't just do this to attract women. He does this for his own empowerment. And that is a whole second book. The first book, which we've pretty much gone through just right about now, is the 4 Gifts. The second one I wrote was called An Invitation to Kingship, and they're both available for free download at spiritualsecretagent.com.
All right, let me do that again. Hold on. Spiritualsecretagent.com. Spiritualsecretagent.com. 4 Gifts,
right, and that's
the first book, and the second book?
An Invitation to Kingship, which was my study of what it was that in the animal and male kingdoms that leaders had.
Got it.
And what were
very
their
interesting,
and their beliefs and their
very
attitudes,
smart.
And
yeah.
what was it for? Yeah.
Now, let me just repeat that there are a million variables, but these are baseline issues that Spencer has researched and come up with for your consideration. One other quickie. You mentioned there are 6 hormones in the stage 1 attraction, PEA being the dominant. You mentioned dopamine is another one. Well, they have found out now that when you get a text or a smartphone communication, dopamine is released in the brain.
Sure.
There's the addiction. Anyway, go ahead. So,
yeah. Very good. So, the other thing that I would mention is it's very hard to have a healthy relationship if we don't have a healthy body. Toxic bodies lead to toxic emotional states.
Amen to that.
Yeah, so, right, if someone's got a lot of mercury in them, they're going to have more cortisol. They're going to become more irritable. If someone's got a lot of various chemicals inside their bodies, if a man's got a lot of xenoestrogens, he's going to become more effeminate. I mean, it's not just our culture. Take a look at the Incredibles, most recent Incredibles movie, where you have the man, ironing clothes and burping a baby and being totally feminine.
It's phytoestrogen poisoning, sure.
Yeah, we've got that too. So, one of the things I do is I make, my day job is I make detox products. We make a product called Zenaplex that's coffee and glutathione as opposed to a coffee enema. It's a suppository for people might consider that with chemical toxicity. We make metacardium, which is EDTA for metal toxicity, and that's also a suppository because these ingredients would be destroyed in the stomach. I mean, most people don't like taking needles in their arms.
Right.
We make liver gallbladder flush. We do a lot of those things. They're all at Remedy Link. So whatever path you take, not only do you want to suppress the prolactin and cortisol, not only do you want to raise the oxytocin, not only do you want to be mindful of the kind of games that you typically fall into with your partners, but you also want to think to yourself, hey, is my health optimum? Because if it's not, it's going to be really hard to manifest the most evolved version of yourself so that you can go and have a good relationship with another human being.
I'm thinking now that the average physical state of most Americans, male and female, especially in men, is not conducive to creating alpha males. They're overweight. They're sluggish. Both sexes are. We just are a fat culture now. It's not our fault. We've been tricked. We've been lied to. We've been taken down the road. It's very hard to break that too. Go ahead, Spencer.
Well, if you want to make an animal fat before slaughter, right? You feed it grains.
Oh yeah.
The classic thing, and so our society, we're big grain eaters. The issue with the alpha male, there's a lot of male bashing in our society, and there's not a lot of healthy male role models. So I call the healthy male role model a king, someone who has a series of personality traits that are the kind of things that make him a better man and make him more attractive to women. And in our culture, you've nailed it. From a social perspective, the social engineers, Hollywood, what we're shown are either weak men or toxic alphas. We're shown criminals who,
especially Caucasian men now. It's open season on Caucasian men. Many of the alpha males now are African American, mixed race. Some of them. The Caucasian male in the alpha role is just not as prevalent as it used to be at all, and they are portrayed in television sitcoms as losers, as effeminate, as weak, as anyway. You know all this.
Well, let me. This is okay. So let's talk about. I guess the term is a fitness test. When a man when a man is not alpha, or not a king is the phrase I would like to use, it's stressful on a woman at a psychological, deep genetic level because she wants someone to provide and protect. Women instinctively know that the world's full of predators. She wants somebody who can provide and protect for her and her children. And when a man does not demonstrate that, it's stressful to her. And what a woman will typically do is she'll test him. She doesn't even know she's doing it, right? And she'll get frustrated, she'll get angry, she'll get cortisol, and she tests him. And the rationale behind the test is basically if you can't take a little bit of pushback from your female partner, how can you possibly take it from the world? So this is sort of a way that women unconsciously test their male partners to find out if they're alpha enough. They'll kind of poke them, they'll nag at them, or they'll snap at them, or they'll be, and men do things that are inappropriate too. Yeah. So when this happens, when a man does not display honorable king-like qualities, it stresses the woman out, makes her more interested in other guys, right? She might find herself attracted to the bare-chested jerk across the street with the beer, mowing the lawn. He's a jerk, but he's an alpha jerk, right? So,
and remember, the odds are 20-1 that a woman's going to score an alpha male, all right?
Right. So what ends up happening is the woman will test the man without even knowing it, and the mistake that men make almost categorically is they'll become nicer. They're like, my partner is in a bad mood. Let me be nice. What can I do? How can I help? What can I do for you? And she wasn't looking for that. Sometimes she is, right? But if she's testing him if she's alpha testing him, if she's feeling that he hasn't got what it takes to be the man that she wants, and she's subconsciously testing him and being a little aggressive, if he acts softer, the testing gets worse because he's demonstrating even more passive beta behavior. What she really wants is for him to stand up for himself and say, hey, you know what? You're right. Maybe what that particular thing I did was inappropriate, or I could have done better, but don't talk to me like that. And this is the issue that most beta males don't understand, is that women are looking for you to be accountable, but they're also looking for you to be strong. I'll give you an example. To women out there that are listening, imagine you say, do you want to go out to dinner? And you ask your husband where he would like to go, and he says, oh, I don't know. Gee, what would you like to do? I don't know. Is that attractive? No, it's wishy-washy. Now, what happens if he says, darling, put on that black satin dress I got you and the pearls when we were out in Tahiti. I'm going to make reservations at the French restaurant. Be ready to go in 45 minutes. That's going to feel entirely different. That guy wasn't being a jerk, but the woman was saying, you know what, I've had a long day. Lead. You know what, I want to go out for dinner, but you make a decision today, and let me relax, and just you take over for a bit. And when the man does that, when he understands that sometimes a woman just wants to relax and, let the man be a
Sure.
man, he has to step forward and do that.
Yeah. So what you're saying in summary here is that when the man becomes kinder, more of a provider, does nicer things, it can backfire.
In some circumstances, she wants him to have a backbone and have some strength. He can still provide, but don't become effeminate.
Got it.
And beta when your woman is testing you.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Wow, the odds are pretty well stacked against success anymore for any long period of time. Maybe people should just get married for 6-year contract and then reevaluate it.
I think you can have happily ever after, but you have to understand a couple of things. One is the person that you met is not the person you're going to be spending the rest of your life
No
with.
chance. No chance.
Right. You both met on amphetamines. You're going to be somebody else, but you remember the oxytocin. Remember the sweet, loving experience, because oxytocin is sustainable. You can bring that up. You gotta, keep the cortisol and prolactin down. You want to be grooming your partner. You want to be mindful that it doesn't last. You've got more than 16 minutes. Do things to constantly be showing them that. And
Very
then
good.
if you can do that, then you can outwit your TNA, and you can have happily ever after.
Very interesting. What a fascinating conversation. Let's remind people where they can get the books and your remedy products. RemedyLink.com. RemedyLink.com. And the books, again, give the 2 titles.
It's the 4 gifts, and the second of the 3 books is An Invitation to Kingship. And they're at spiritualsecretagent.com, and they're free. Just
spiritualsecretagent.com for the books. Spiritualsecretagent.com. All right. And RemedyLink.com for the supplements, and it sounds like they're pretty smart. Spencer, that was really fun. A very interesting change of pace, and I hope we open some doors for people to help understand what they're going through right now. A lot of people they're caught in stage 2, stage 3, and stage 3 sounds pretty hellacious.
Perhaps one last thing. If your partner cheats on you and you decide that you do want to try to work it out, you do want to see if you can stay together, it hasn't broken the marriage yet, just understanding that PEA makes a person a little crazy. You might have I'm not excusing someone else's behavior, but just understand that when they do that, they are on an amphetamine. They're not necessarily making the smartest, most loving choices.
Oh, it's not. They're not living in their head at all. Understand? It's not a brain function thing.
Yeah.
That's a very fair and I think honorable thing to say. That it's not excusing, but it is by way of giving at least a reasonable potential explanation. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, and what you could say is, look, now you know that you went a little crazy from PEA, and you probably did so because I participated in letting your oxytocin drop. But you can't do it again because you know better now.
Yeah.
Right? You might. Okay.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Spencer, thank you. It's been a couple years. It was worth the wait. We'll talk again.
Sounds great, Jeff.
Thank
Have a great
you.
evening.
All right. You too. Thanks. Spencer Feldman. And I've never done that before. 25 years, and we had an interesting way to look at things. Again, not an answer for every situation by any means, but some generalities that are worth considering there, certainly. He's done some unusual research. Okay, that's our program tonight. We will be back in 21 hours tomorrow night. Should be a lot of fun. Hope to have the pleasure of your company then. Take care, and we'll talk soon.